Hello, everyone. I'm Michiko Hayashi from Emoto Peace Project in Tokyo, Japan. Today, I'm so excited because I'm going to interview Betsy Pool, who lives in Damanhur in Italy. And she made this amazing movie called The Story of Everything. And I would like to introduce that. Before that, I would like to, welcome Betsy. Hi, Betsy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here with you and to see you again.
Gosh. This is so exciting. I am just so excited congratulations on this film completion. I can't believe you've done it.
Well, it's part one. We still have two to complete. So
wow.
This is part one. So,
okay. Before we start talking about it, let me just introduce you to all the audience, okay?
Great. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Betsy Pool is a narrator and a writer, producer, and director. And she lives in the renowned spiritual eco community in northern Italy called Damanhur. Many people, I'm sure many people know about it. And actually, I visited Damanhur, and that's when I met you in 2017. It was in January. We had a lot of snow, and I went. You invited me to that story room, was it?
Yes,
story room, and explain how it was. And we're going to talk about it too. All right, let me see. Betsy and her family became the first American family in Damanhur in 2009 as an award-winning screenwriter with an extensive production background in Broadway theater, film, and television. Betsy became the head of the integrated media strategy for Damanhur shortly after arriving there. During her work with the community, she discovered that fragmented throughout Damanhur's esoteric archive was a cohesive ancient history of humanity that is not reflected in the history books. Betsy's mission was to reassemble this history into a mythological narrative that could be shared as a catalyst for the world, and she did it. A physical story room was constructed, and for a decade, she painstakingly pieced together this history from 40 years of Falco's teachings and combined with interviews of Damanhurians with whom he had entrusted parts of the story. Well, and she made the story of everything. Wow, congratulations. I'm so, this is really amazing. You are an amazing woman. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Really, this work has been done in service to something much larger than my own personal story. I believe that we as humanity don't have a central history that connects us. And so while for many, this film may appear to be science fiction, it's my hope that it will in fact resonate somewhere within the viewers and start to be a catalyst that can create an extraordinary shift in terms of how we view our world.
And you completed it, and now it's ready for everyone to watch it. I mean, at this time when people are still in lockdown, and to me, this is really the time that everybody should be watching. It was ready. It was meant to be released now, I think.
I get goose flesh when you say that, because in fact, there have been so many obstacles and pieces that were hard to bring together. And we also work with a disincarnate group of guides who kept saying to us, everything will happen at exactly the right time with exactly the right people in exactly the right way.
Goosebumps.
And so just trusting that. And I was a film producer, so I was used to, organizing, funding, schedules, budgets, everything. And they said to me, you can't produce this in the way you've produced in the past. You have to let this emerge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very much how it's happened. And in fact, we couldn't have predicted that we would be in a global crisis and lockdown
God.
at the point that the film came out.
Mm-hmm.
There was no way to plan for or foresee. And so I feel that perhaps this is coming into the public view at a point where maybe people have a slightly larger attention span to engage with it.
Okay, before we talk about it, could I show the trailer so that people can see what it's like, just a little bit?
Absolutely, a little taste.
A little taste, that's what I would like. Okay, let me see.
I cannot predict what form this new myth will take, but I believe it will transcend cultural boundaries and represent global consciousness. This would be the philosophy for the planet.
But the society that it's going to talk about is the society of the planet. And until that gets going, you don't have anything.
There's that wonderful photograph you have of the Earth seen from space. And it's very small. And at the same time, it's very grand.
You don't see any divisions there of nations or states or anything of the kind. This might be the symbol, really, for the new mythology to come.
What if modern history prevents you from knowing the whole story? Time to start telling the biggest story of mankind. The story of everything. A lost mythology of humanity long reserved in the esoteric archive of Damanhur, celebrated spiritual echo community in northern Italy. Betsy Pool invites you into the story room. Could this be the story that unites us at this singular time? Join us.
All right.
Wow, thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you. I remember being in that story room and you just shared everything you were doing, told us how the history was gonna, mistold us, and we were taught differently. And then when you look, all the things that we have learned, because we were taught in the classrooms and we believed in everything we were taught. But when we look around, a lot of times we start to question. Maybe there are many people who don't even question things, but when you start to ask questions, then you go, why did it happen? Why do they say this is like Christopher Columbus came to the United States? He was the very first person who found the American continent. Then I go, is that right? Is it? I mean, everybody believes in that, but is that really true? Things like that.
I think we have a consensus reality that in some way we've all agreed to believe based on really three streams. We have our biological family who have a worldview that they give to us. We have our education, which is another world that's given to us. And then we have the society that we were born into, which is another worldview that's given to us. And so I think that we're really wet from these three streams. And it's only at the point where we have the ability to step out of those stories and open our mind that we have potentially the possibility to see that there's a bigger reality at play than these three rivers have informed us about.
Yeah.
So I was extremely curious. I was looking for, it's not even answers, but I was looking for a bigger story than what I was seeing reflected in my day-to-day world growing up.
Yeah.
I believe that as a child, I had certain experiences that didn't fit into the consensus reality view of life and experience.
Yeah.
And so in some way, I think that awakened me to the fact that, or the potential that there was something beyond what was just on a day-to-day basis in front of us.
So you went to the to Damanhur in 2009. You've been there for more than 10 years, 12 years now?
Well, we've been here. So I first came here in 2007.
Oh.
And this was really the answer to a calling. In 2003, my mother died. And after her death, at this point, we lived in California. We lived in Los Angeles.
Oh, I see.
Life in Los Angeles. And I had this gut feeling that we were supposed to in some way end up in Italy. Wow. And there was no pragmatic reason. We are not Italian. We didn't have family here. We didn't know people here. But there was this strong sense that in some way we were supposed to end up in Italy. Well, that strong sense, as it played out, turned out to be a calling to this community.
So you just, how did you choose to be in Damanhur instead? I mean, there are so many different cities in Italy.
And believe me, we searched, we looked all over this country. I mean, my first intention was to buy a house in Italy. I had a small inheritance from my mother, and I sensed that the stock market was not a secure investment. Right. And I said to my husband, you know, I think I want to use this money and buy a house in Italy. And
what did he say?
So, you know, I mean, my husband, we've been together for 33 years, and he's learned to trust this inner voice that I have. Wow. And so he was willing to support this search, and we literally looked for homes all over the country, and had decided to settle in a different part of Italy, in the Marche, where we had developed a community of close friends. And I remember going back, we started to live there for 3 months every other year in the summer. And I remember going home after the second summer we'd lived there, and going back to my daughter's Waldorf school, where we had a beautiful community, and thinking, oh, this just doesn't make sense. We have such deep soul connections here in our Waldorf community. You know, why am I being called to the other side of the world? We have beautiful friends in Italy, but I don't have the same level of soul connection in this community. And it was at that point that my, I mean, it's a bit of a story. My best friend had come to school to get her daughter, and she was in tears. And I said, Robin, what's wrong? And she had this inflamed thyroid. And she was supposed to have a biopsy that day. And the nurse practitioner in the doctor's office had called in sick, and they canceled her appointment. Wow. And I got the core information that there was something non-physical about this that she needed to find out before she had the biopsy. Right. And so, you know, I conveyed this to her, thought that was it. That day, I got an email from a man who does an aggregate of events in Los Angeles in the area. And there was a medical intuitive who was doing a session the following week. And I contacted my friend Robin, and I said, you know, maybe this is what I was feeling, that you should look for answers beyond the physical in this. Right. And she said, will you come with me? And I said, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. And so it turned out that this medical intuitive was doing a research study, he called it. He was really looking to see if he could create sessions working with people over the phone. And so he was asking for volunteers. And so we both volunteered, and we called in. And I wasn't dealing with a medical issue, but he went through the process of tuning in to disincarnate guides. Wow. And as he did that, he was not finding any. And I'm thinking, this is just great. I'm here on this planet with no guidance. What's that about? And as we're about to hang up, he says, wait. I just connected with your guides. Wow. Your guides are way up next to the cosmic mirror. And I was thinking, I've never heard that term before. Right. It turns out it's a term that's used in Damanhur, but this was unrelated. Wow. And he said to me, your guides are asking you to make a list of the things that you still want to do in your life. And when you come to my workshop next week, I want you to share that. We're going to connect again, and you're going to share that list. And so I took my friend Robin. We went, she had her session with him. I went into my session with him, and we started to go through my list. And to be honest, I hadn't fully engaged in this because I was going with my friend.
Your friend,
But
yeah.
just before, the night before, I thought it doesn't hurt to actually define
Uh-huh.
these things.
Sure.
And so I had made my list.
Mhm.
And to be honest, my list was very esoteric. My list were things like I wanted to better understand how time functions. Because in my life, I've had anomalous time occurrences.
Nice.
I wanted, as a storyteller, to understand what was happening to the archetypes on the planet.
Wow.
Because I also had a sense that archetypes were in transition or shifting. The archetype of mother. What does the archetype of mother look like today compared to 50 years ago?
Right.
So these were the questions that I was bringing into this session. And when we started to go through my list and he heard the time research question, he said, oh, you know, there's a place in Italy. I don't even know the name of it. All I know is they have an underground temple there. And I know that they do time research. Okay, so logically you would think this man has just mentioned Italy.
Italy,
so there should be bells going off in my head, right? No, I'm a little slow in this department. And so as we drove home that day, my friend Robin, by the time we got back to the San Fernando Valley, the swelling in her thyroid had completely resolved.
Oh my gosh, really?
Did not have any issues afterwards.
Wow.
So he had clued into the non-physical issue behind it. And I
Amazing.
thought this experience was complete. And it was a couple of days later, I'm putting my daughter to bed. I've just nursed her. She's going to sleep. And it was as if there was an external voice that shouted at me, go Google Italy underground temple time research.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, now I'm hearing voices. It was just such a non-pragmatic story at this point. And so I got up and I Googled these phrases. And at the time, Damanhur is not well known in the world. This is 2007.
Right. Yeah.
And I found an article in a magazine called Enlightenment Magazine. And it spoke about this utopian community in the foothills of the Alps. And throughout the article, it didn't even mention the name of the place. It spoke about it as a fantasy. And at the end of it, it said, and this place actually exists. And it's called the Federation.
So it was
Damanhur.
actually still hidden at that time.
It was still very reserved. And
right.
There was small outreach, but not the kind of global outreach and connection that exists today.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was, and so I now have the name of the place, and I start to Google, and I find a few articles here and there, nothing really solid.
Wow.
Our daughter goes to my husband, her father, and says, you know, Papa, Mama's been online for 3 days Googling this place. I think we should go there right away. Because, you know, sometimes the things you see online are not as good when you get there in person. And I don't want Mama to be disappointed. So this out of the mouth of babes, I mean, and he looked at me, he said, you know, maybe she's right. Maybe you should go check this place out. And he was working full time at the time. He couldn't come with us. It was my daughter's birthday. The day that I found affordable airline tickets. And it was on her birthday. And I was pulled in so many ways because I didn't want to be apart from her dad on her birthday. You know, we're you know, traveling to this place, and I suddenly had this crisis of confidence where I called my friend Robin. I remember I'm on the 118 freeway driving between Pasadena and the Valley, and I called my friend Robin. I said, Robin, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is crazy. I'm going to this place in Italy. I don't know what this is. This could be a cult. What am I doing taking my child there? You know, I feel this is crazy. And she said to me, Betsy, calm down. Of all of the people I've known in my life, you are the person that I know who's the most connected to being able to manifest what's in your heart.
Yeah.
You just need to go to this place with an open heart and find what it is that's calling you.
Wow.
And so we did that. We arrived here on her birthday. And the first 3 days, honestly, I could tell there was something profound going on here.
So
And
how did you find that place? I mean, until you got to Italy, you really didn't know how to get there. I mean,
no, I found, so what I found eventually, that they had a very rabbit warreny website.
Mm-hmm.
And they were offering a program called, I think it was called Primi Passi, First Look.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a program that was designed for people who would come to visit the community who were considering transitioning to live here.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And I called and I signed up for this program. And literally, she said this on Saturday that we should go there.
Mm-hmm.
We arrived there the following Wednesday.
Oh my
4
gosh, so
days
you had
later.
only 3-4 days.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
This program was starting. And so I made the arrangement. I enrolled in the class. I found the tickets. I rented a car. I arrive here with my young child.
Yeah.
And we get here and I go to the welcome office to actually, inscribe in the course. And they say to me, we're really sorry, but 17 people have canceled and we're not doing the course.
Oh my God.
And there were 2 older women from Canada who had also come, who had enrolled in the course.
Mm-hmm.
And so they essentially said, look, we're going to create just a special program for the 4 of you, the 2 older women and myself and my small child. And so they created this sort of special program for us.
Mm-hmm.
The synchronicity of this is that the Primi Passi program was a very rigorous program.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to do it with a small child. And these 2 older women wouldn't have been able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so somehow synchronically, the universe was supporting our introduction to Damanhur. And so for 3 days, we were studying things like esoteric physics, very complex conceptual work.
Wow.
And I'm really thinking, okay, this is kind of crazy. This place is extraordinary. There's clearly something going on here, but it's completely impenetrable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to leave and drive to the Marche where we had other friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't said to anyone yet that I was going to leave the program early. But Damanhurians started coming up to me and saying, oh, we heard you're leaving early. Are you leaving the program early? And I'm thinking, I didn't tell anybody that. What's going on here?
Wow. So they could read your mind?
There's a paratelepathic field within the community.
Oh.
And so it's not that they're reading your mind, it's that the information is in the field and they're tuning into it.
Yeah.
And then I started to see people here and meet people here that I felt like I knew.
Wow.
And I'm asking, have you ever worked in New York? Have you ever worked in Tokyo? Have you ever worked places I'd worked? And these people, many of them had never been out of this valley.
Wow.
But I knew these people.
Uh-huh.
And at a certain point, I realized these were the people who've been in my dream world for the past 30 years.
Wow.
And I had first started to dream about these people, in fact, when I was staying in the Akasaka Prince Hotel in Tokyo.
In Tokyo, yeah.
In Tokyo. And so there was this Japanese connection in this whole story.
Really?
And for me, the key to this story was going to have dinner at one of the nucleos, the communal homes that people live in. And there was one of the founders at dinner, Fenice, and there was an elderly Japanese man, Makoto. And Makoto-san. Makoto-san is introduced to me as the man who was the lead engineer and the person who had conceived Shinkansen technology, the high-speed train technology in Japan.
Wow.
He had led the creation of that project. Wow. And his area of expertise was magnetic underground and above ground high-speed train technology. And so when I went to that dinner that night, I was met at the door by a Damanhurian citizen, young man who said to me, tonight's going to change your life. And I was like, okay, I'm open to that. And so at this dinner, I'm seated across from Makoto-san. And I said to him, what are you doing here?
Right.
And he said to me, I live in an area of Japan that's like the Silicon Valley of Japan. And it's at the absolute apex of human technology. And the work being done here with Falco in this community is light years beyond that.
Wow.
And so for me to have this well-known, very pragmatic engineer saying to me, this is not a mass hallucination, this is a reality. It
Right.
shifted something in me. And I realized, no, there's something not only profound going on here, but there's something that's really a key right now in terms of the evolutionary path of humanity.
So at that time, Falco was still alive?
Falco was still alive at this time. Yes,
Okay.
Falco passed or transitioned in 2013.
13, I see.
Yes, yes.
So you had
I
some
had
time to spend.
I ended up having actually quite dense contact with Falco because of this media project that I conceived for the community. And so during that time, I actually had very, very consistent contact with Falco. And he was, in fact, helping to guide the project.
So where did he have stored all the teachings or information that he created or he had?
So Falco, over the course of these 40 years, had at different points held courses. So courses in ancient civilization, not ancient Greek and Roman civilization, but ancient galactic and Earth civilizations.
Wow, yeah.
And so he would bring very dense knowledge about that. And then maybe 20 years later, give another clue to that in a serata, the evening meetings. So Falco, with great consistency, every Thursday night throughout the history of the community, did a serata, a meeting where the citizens of Damanhur came together and he would teach and answer questions. And all of his teachings had been videotaped or recorded, you know, every generation of recording device was used. And all of this was stored in an archive. And that archive was dense and deep and many different mediums. And over the course of the last 10 years, all of that's been transferred into more current mediums. And it's been, in fact, indexed in a library system indexing. So the archive has been organized in a way that it could be accessed.
So you started to learn from his teachings and then they compiled everything, assembled everything?
So I was finding different pieces of this story, and I was a screenwriter. And as a screenwriter, my way of working was, in fact, to always densely outline before I started to write. And I used an index card looking program where I would do this. And so I had this idea to do this on index cards. As I found pieces of the story, I would put the key story point on an index card, knowing that behind that there's a dense amount of other information, but I wanted the key story points. And so I started to assemble them in a room. And because this story is nonlinear, I felt it was important that this room be in some way surrounding me. Because this time connects to this time connects to this time. I mean, it's an incredibly complex piece to actually assemble. And so between the archive and also doing interviews with the founders, other people in Damanhur who had participated from points in this story, I put together this story room, which you experienced.
So what was the most difficult thing? I mean, creating this film or the film?
I think that the difficult thing is that I felt that this story had to be transmitted, not just written in a book. In some way that locks a story in place. And this story is not concrete. It's still changing. Events in the present can change events in the past. The way we look at time is not as a concrete linear structure. And so I felt that in some way, fixing this in a written book would not do it justice and could potentially be detrimental. And in 2019, the group that my partner Edgar and I channel started to communicate that I had to in some way take this into the world now. It wasn't sufficient to have people come here and receive the transmission of this.
Right.
And this is, I mean, this is a story that to represent in a traditional film would take millions and millions of dollars and technology.
Sure.
And so the idea came just to do the same transmission that I do for people who come to the story room and videotape it.
Wow.
And so it's an unconventional film. It's a film that's actually an oral storytelling.
Wow.
And we've created imagery throughout, but it really is an oral storytelling where I invite the viewer into the story room to have a firsthand experience there.
Wow. I need to watch it. I mean, the whole thing. I really have to watch it because I remember when I was there, you just started to teach us what was happening, what you were doing, and how you were assembling everything. I was just, at that time, I was already amazed and I was really moved and could not wait. And actually, I didn't know how long it was going to take for you to complete it, or even you can complete it. And then just received this message that this film is now available. I was going, oh my gosh, you did it.
And since, in fact, since you've been here, this work is not complete by any means. And part of putting this story into the world is also to cultivate others in the world who have pieces of this story. So my hope is that this will catalyze others who carry parts of this story. I actually met a wonderful Japanese man, Ken Kitatani, who is in fact a priest in one of the highest esoteric lines in Japan.
Wow.
And as he began to share the story of the origin story from his perspective and his lineage, he was in fact speaking about Mu and this area. And so there was deep mythology in your culture, in his culture, around Mu.
I know,
which is part of this story.
Oh wow!
And so
can't wait.
This is a piece of the story, and connecting it to the rest of the story.
Wow!
And I've had other elders and traditional wisdom keepers come through the story room and say to me, "Our origin story is here," and another people's "Our origin story is here."
Yeah.
And so the idea was to connect this mosaic of story into a single narrative that my dream is that it can, in its completion, represent global consciousness.
Yeah. And it's now coming. So this film, I'm sure people, when we watch it, we will be just opening even more eyes and to start seeing more things and getting all the consciousness together, I think.
I hope that this will be in some way a trigger for people. And for many, in 2014, I had the human potential leader, Jean Houston, in the story room. And Jean spent 4 hours with me in this mythology. And at the end of it, she said to me, "You know, Betsy, I really believe that this is the core mythology of humanity that Joe, her friend Joseph Campbell, predicted the emergence of. This is why he's in the trailer." Before his death, predicted the emergence of. And Betsy, here's the issue with it. It's beyond the worldview of probably 90% of the people on the planet right now. And you now need to connect with physicists, cosmologists, and researchers who are working on the frontiers of consciousness. And so very much people like your mentor, Dr. Emoto, with the consciousness of water, you know, connecting with people like Jude Coravan, a physicist who's working on a cohesive worldview of a holographic universe. People like David Musum, who's working also with this aspect of electromagnetic resonance and that in its connection to consciousness. And so synchronically, I had an invitation to begin to work closely with Ervin Laszlo.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
of the Club of Budapest.
Mhm.
And Irvin created something called the Laszlo Institute of New Paradigm Research
Mhm.
and began to invite these cutting edge thinkers together in symposiums.
Mhm.
And so I began, this is actually where I met your colleague, Ted,
Right.
at one of those symposiums.
Mhm.
And I began to actually do interviews with some of these cutting edge
Mhm.
scientists
Mhm.
in support of the to create credibility around this work with this alternative history.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, so it's available right now. They can watch it. And would you like to give out the website, or I can write down, make them
So
write,
if you
here, I
can
write down.
make a note in the, so right now it's available in video on demand with both Vimeo and
Vimeo.
Real House.
Uh-huh.
We also have a Patreon campaign going currently where people can help us to actually fund the finishing of part 2 and part 3,
Oh,
which
wow.
brings us into the present day.
Wow.
So part 1 takes us up to the collapse, the final collapse of Atlantis. And so we're seeking help to finish part 2 and part 3, which is already partially shot, but we need the resources to be able to finish editing it.
Sure.
And add also interviews with people who were part of aspects of the story in the present day.
So if you can give me the address where people can go into, and then I will just add that link.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We'll do that. Yeah.
Wow. Great. Well, it was so good to have you. And I can't wait until I watch the first version of the movie.
I can't wait to hear your thoughts after you watch the first version.
I will watch it.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a small amount, right? It's like about $5 or €5 or something.
It's €4.50 to rent.
Oh, that's really so
yes.
reasonable. I mean, when I think about you working on the whole thing, assembling for more than 10 years.
And we did this actually without any external funding. I mean, we've done this work out of, it's really been a mission for us that we've funded out of our own pockets. And so we're at a point where that's not sustainable to finish part 2 and part 3.
Right.
So I would do this work without any funding. I think it's so critical for humanity. But we do have to feed our children. So
exactly. I know that I have a really good friend of a really good friend of mine. He's one of the very well-known movie producers here in Japan. He makes beautiful movies, and I know he does not want any sponsor, because if he does, the things that he can say or things that he can make will be limited. So he doesn't really have any sponsor, but all the fund comes in because people want him to make the real important films. So I know that people will resonate with what you're doing, and they will want to support you, and I will want to support you too. So
I appreciate that. And you're a huge support by actually inviting me to be on your show today.
Well,
so
thank you so much. Great. Well, I will see you on probably Ted's show, radio show with us Zoom again, and we will spread this as widely as possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betsy. And we'll stay in touch. I would love to come back to Damanhur sometime after this is over.
Yes, when things open up, we would love to have you back. There's been so much transition and transformation here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And everyone, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. And please know that I love you so much. Bye-bye.